Hello guys, welcome to another episode of the Weekly Feedback. I am your host, Caveman PRDR, and today I want to talk about a few things regarding some feedback on the some things that have been going on in the past couple of weeks with the new season 19. But first, I want to go over I want to do a little bit of a review before we go into the week. One of the probably most important things that, or a couple of really important things that was announced over the weekend, which includes I'm one of the major community managers. DMG is taking a step down as a senior community manager, and he will have his final day on December 30th. So he is looking to make some changes in his career, and that includes stepping away from his position as community manager for Bungie. He's been an awesome follow, in my opinion. He makes the weekly TWAB where Bungie does their update for the week, or they talk to the community through a blog post on their website, and just kind of give us an idea of things to things to look forward to, or things to see in the upcoming developments, as well as talk about current things in the week, whether it be major events that's going on around in the world or things like that. They give us a little bit of an inside look, and DMG has been a really big part of that, and I have really enjoyed following him on Twitter, and him taking his time to be patient with the community, as all of the managers are. He was a really awesome follow. Got a lot of laughs out of the weekly TWAB update, so congratulations to him for making a move and seeing what goes forward, or where he goes moving forward with his career path. So, with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about a couple other things that went on. I'm just gonna jump up to a couple of Bungie help things that were tweeted. So, in particular, we'll start with we have identified an issue with the Jade Rabbit exotic scout rifle and have temporarily disabled the weapon until a fix can be implemented. So, earlier this past week, Jade Rabbit had to be disabled. I'm assuming there was an issue with its exotic trait or its exotic perk. I'm not entirely sure what caused this. I didn't personally have any interactions with Jade Rabbit this week to know what would be going on with it. And to this day, I don't even know if it's re-enabled yet. But evidently there was something up with Jade Rabbit. So if you let me know, if you know why they disabled it, leave something in the comments and let me know, because I'm kind of curious about this one. So yeah, I wanted to give a heads up on that. One important thing while I'm here, and I still have it on my mind, Bungie has finally fixed some of the seasonal artifact. There were some class item mods that were only available in Artifice armor, but they have fixed the issue where it was only showing up on Artifice armor, and now you can slot it into your normal class items columns 2 and 3 spaces. So, good job Bungie on getting that fixed a weekend. Would have been nice to have had that sooner, or had it come out correctly to begin with, but a lot of the stuff that was in there was pretty far down into the seasonal artifacts, so not everyone was going to be able to have access to it the first week anyway. So, good job on them on getting that fixed. Another thing I wanted to talk about, as far as the Bungie help stuff goes, is there was an issue or a glitch where players can go flawless. have their 7-win card, they can go to Saint 14, turn in the card, and as long as you have engrams, you can turn in the card in an engram for a Adept Exalted Truth, because Exalted Truth is the weapon for the week, and the Adept version is. Right, so they could turn it in, and as long as you had engrams, I think it's as long as you have engrams that Saint 14 is holding, or as long as you have engrams in general. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. But you could look right back at the passage page on Saint, and you can pick up your 7-win card again. So it would literally just give you your card back. Or I'm pretty sure it's still doing this, actually. So Bungie found out that this was an issue on Friday afternoon. They said they're looking for a fix into it, and in the meanwhile, they have decided to just let it be, let players do what they want, because they know how RNG is for the game. So they just decided to let it be for the weekend, let the bug run its course until they can find a fix for it in the upcoming week, and they are going to disable Flawless Pool for this weekend. So that way players can still keep getting chances at this. I'm assuming disabling the Flawless Pool is going to make it easier going flawless. There won't be a separated matchmaking pool for trials on Sunday and Monday, so everyone gets the chance to play everyone. I know I got home from work on Friday. I grinded to rank 10 so I could get that Exalted Truth. I had 19 trials engrams saved from Season 18, so I spent like 3 of them on focusing the Exalted Truth, and got what is personally a god roll for me, and was happy with that. So I decided to keep spinning to see if there were other rolls I could get. There was a certain column 3 and 4 perk combo that I wanted, and I got it. I don't really like the rest of the perks on it, but I'm going to be working on a review for that soon. But anyway, Exalted Truth is in the matchmaking pool this weekend. At rank 10, you can get a normie one. That's what I did. I haven't went flawless, haven't bothered LFGing or anything. It's not a freelance weekend, unfortunately, so you go in freelance, there's a solid chance that you're going to run into teams of 3. I think I played exactly 40 matches to get to rank 10. And I only won 12 of those. So, it is what it is. I think I played like maybe 3 games where everyone was solo. Maybe. 3 of the 40, maybe. But anyway, that's aside from the point. So Exalted Truth is kind of just, the Adept version is kind of just out there now. So let's talk about, while we're in Trials, let's talk about the playlist identity of Trials to begin with, right? So, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Trials, it's a loot playlist now, right? So, now that we have comp, and technically right now all we have is rank to grind towards, if you're not including the weekly rose drops, we should just make Trials the loot playlist, right? So, yes, Trials loot is generally supposed to be some of the better loot, and now that Exalted Truth is out, one of the probably 2 best hand cannons in the game now drops from Trials. So I think maybe we should do away with needing 7 wins and without losing to get loot. So I think maybe Saint, what we should do is maybe toss a couple of these cards. Let's have like let's have the Passage of Mercy, and then maybe keep Ferocity or Passage of Wealth. Well, let's keep the Mercy Passage. So let's make this a loot playlist, because that's what it seems like it is at this point. So what we should do is you should be able to pick up a card for the week, or for the weekend rather, when it's available. Get that card to 7 wins, and then whenever you get that card to 7 wins, regardless of losses, you should be able to, if you keep playing, get chances at the loot table to drop whenever you win games afterwards, regardless of whether or not if you've already lost. So let's say it took 10 games to be played on a Mercy card to get 7 wins. Let's let that flawed passage. Let's let that 7 win card, if the player with that, let them keep playing on that 7 win card, and after the 7th win, every match they win after that, while they're holding that card, just let something drop from the loot pool. Or maybe let the normal version of whatever adept weapon is available, let it drop after every win with a flawed card. Like, let's I'm still fine personally with keeping the adept versions behind a flawless 7 win card. I think that's still fine. But let's make it work a little bit easier. And maybe tone down. Okay, not even maybe. The material cost for these needs to be toned down. I'm gonna be honest. Even if it's just like 25% of what it currently is, that would be great, because I stay low on legendary shards since I make builds all of the time. I make different builds on Dim all the time, so I just stay low on legendary shards. So, in my opinion, let's do that for the normal 7 win card. Let's do that. And then for those that go flawless, definitely give them a chance in adept, and then maybe like guarantee more for the win whenever they get their flawless. So maybe 1 or 2 ascendant shards, maybe like 3 to 5 prisms. Heck, maybe even a small percent chance for a second adept drop. That would be awesome, and maybe maybe a pinnacle, maybe a second pinnacle along the way. Maybe a high chance for another pinnacle. I think that let's do that instead of the current system that we have. I think we would find a much higher population in trials if we had some sort of change similar to that. And also, fire team based matchmaking needs to be in here. It sucks having to solo queue and play 37 matches of 40 against teams of 3. Not a fun time. So let's do that. Let's talk about comp a little bit. So there are some game types and some maps, in my opinion, that we need to remove, or we need to rework how the game type works. So in particular, I think Showdown in general, if I'm not mistaken, on Game 5, because Showdown you have to win a best of 3. If I'm not mistaken, on Game 5, all you have to do is capture a capture point or eliminate the enemy team, I think, to win the game 5 overtime. And in particular on Rusted Lands, the map Rusted Lands, there is a heavily favored to the beachside spawn. So if you're looking at Rusted Lands, the this map in Destiny 2, if you're looking at this one specifically, if I'm not mistaken, in this part of the map, the capture point is like just on this side of the opening. And if you know the map, you know that it's heavily, heavily favored toward those that have the beachside spawn right here. So all they have to do is just spawn right here, walk up, and then have an easy setup for the overtime for the game 5 win. The other team has to come all the way from back here to win, and they have 3 main options to look at as far as getting there. The closest one is the small tunnel where heavy spawns on control, and it's the most bottlenecked thing. It's a really bad really bad tiebreaker, heavily favored to one team. In my opinion, if you keep the tiebreaker the way it is, that map needs to be removed. If you can change the tiebreaker mechanic, make it where it's kind of like in zone control trials, where maybe you have like 30 seconds to fight the enemy team and then the point goes live, I think that would work so much better. But and that's if they choose to keep the capture point in the same spot. Personally, I don't immediately see a place on Rusted Lands. As much as I like the map, I don't think there's a place on Rusted Lands that is a fair spot to put it where there's not a favoritism on the other side. Because if you look at that mid wall, and let's say you put it on the opposite side, then I think the spawn that gets kind of like the swamp respawn, I think they get the advantage. Because then you have the same problem with the beachside players. So, in my opinion, I think the best thing to do is just to remove Rusted Lands from that game type. But hey, if someone has a better idea in the chat regarding that, let me know. Another thing, I have a couple other points about comp as well. I think, and I really like Rift. I think Rift is fun. Even in 3v3, I think it's fun. I think it's more fun, especially whenever you have a pre-made fire team going into it. Solo, I can understand why maybe people would not like it so much. I just like it because it's not a slay first, or it's not a slayer objective-based game type. Like, yes, if you play it correctly, you should slay first, then play objective. And I like it because you score based off of objective. We haven't had that in Destiny in a really long time. No, Control does not count as an objective game, because you get points based off of slays after you capture a point. And there can be a multiplier for how many points the slays count as. So, in my opinion, Control does not count. Zone control does count. But we're going to go back to comp. So anyway, Rift, I like Rift. It's fun for 3v3. It's not fun when you have to play on Disjunction. It's not fun when you have to play on Cathedral of Dusk. I would prefer it on smaller maps like Wormhaven. I think Wormhaven isn't that bad. Wormhaven isn't the best, but I would take playing Rift on Wormhaven over Disjunction every day of the week. IMO, I think we should just keep Rift. If we're gonna keep Rift in comp, let's have it on the smaller asymmetrical maps. And as much as Convergence is not a good map, I don't mind Convergence Rift that much. It's still not a it's not a great map. It's not a good map. But I actually just like Rift on Convergence, but it's probably just because I like Rift. So let's have new, smaller, symmetrical and asymmetrical maps, and have Rift on those instead of the larger maps for 3v3. Anyway, now one positive thing I will say about comp is that I am ecstatic over the fact that it's more than one game type. I really like that, and I didn't ever really play Showdown, but I would love, or not Showdown, but there was a bomb game type, I can't remember what it's called now. Countdown. I'd love to try out Countdown, and would love to see it back as a comp game type and see how it goes. Some other things that I wanted to talk about regarding comp include, I think I mentioned this last week, but I think this is really important. I think they need to get to work on this. I think they need to give ranked rewards. So maybe reaching a certain rank, you get certain emblems to unlock, shaders, ornaments for Crucible gear, stuff like that for every season. An individual thing for every season. Like, maybe this season I'll get some really good ornament, some really cool looking ornament for Stars in Shadow or for Frozen Orbit. I think that would be fantastic. If you get to if you get to Ascendant, you can unlock a special ornament for Rose. That would be awesome. Maybe every year, if you get to Ascendant, or maybe every season when you get to Ascendant, there's a special emblem for Rose, and you get to unlock that. And then maybe there toss in shaders and toss in cosmetic rewards. Nothing that really enhances gameplay. Let's do that. Let's make those ranked rewards in the future. Because right now, I really don't have a reason to play comp other than just getting Rose every week. Getting random chances for Rose every week. So, let's work on that. And speaking of Rose itself, so I'm a 3-character main. I play all 3 characters. I technically consider myself a Titan main, but I'm going to be honest, I've played less Titan this season than I have in the last, 4 seasons. I think the most I played Titan was the start of this season, and before that was the end of Season 17, whenever Lorelei Splendor was meta. I used it a good little bit on Solar Titan, and that's pretty much the most I've used Titan. I play all 3 classes frequently, and I do the weekly comp mission for Rose on all 3. So, in my opinion, awesome. I get 3 chances at Rose drops, and don't get me wrong, the gun has an awesome perk pool. It's hard to really get a miss, but it's still RNG, and it's hard to get what you want. And as someone who plays 3 characters, that's not that bad for me. But for those of you that only play 1 character, that's not cool. So I would love to see Bungie make some kind of change where maybe they add Rose to Shax's pool of weapons. Maybe add it there. Maybe you have to lock it behind the introductory comp quest. lock the reward behind there in the node or with all the other weapons. You have to finish the dividing the ladder quest, then have Rose there, and then maybe give Rose like a plus 25 to plus 50% material cost from the other multiplayer weapons that drop. So that way you're still paying a hefty price for what is better loot, but you get more chances at it. Instead of just, oh, well, I'm done for the week after one chance. So let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at doing that. Let's take a look at what it would look like over here. So you just approach Shax, and then you tab over to the focused decoding, and then maybe you have the normal Crucible gear, and then you have another thing down here that's for focused decoding, and then it has comp in focused decoding for Crucible, or quick play, focused decoding for comp. And then it'll have Rose here and any other comp weapons in the future. Maybe you have to just complete the dividing the ladder quest every season whenever they decide to release a new comp weapon. Have it down here for decoding and make it like a plus 20, make it a plus 25% cost from this. I think that is totally reasonable to do. And that way, the players who are one and done every week don't have to complain about being one and done. If they really want the roles, they can still get multiple chances at it. It'll come at a cost, but I think it's better than what we have now. So as far as comp goes, those were really the main things I wanted to talk about. I will say this though. If you've played this past week, and especially Trials this weekend, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about this now. SBMM has been really, really bad with lag. Actually, we'll get onto that in a second. Actually, okay, yeah. So, I don't know if you played the past week, but comp for me has been laggy, and Trials has been really bad. PvP in particular for this week, for me, ever since the weekly reset, I'm not sure what's happened. I don't know if they've taken off the loose SBMM or what, but matches have been fairly laggy for me lately. And I guess now is as good of a time. I've got some clips that I want to actually share, so I'll share in this portion of the video. There's been some lag that I've not been fond of, especially in Trials when I played my 40 games. I've had some really frustrating times with lag. I know there was a comp match I played where I got killed by a Titan who was sniping, I believe, and I think we were playing, what was it? I'm pretty sure I was playing Bannerfall. And it was like the Titan was on their balcony, and I wasn't even on balcony. I was at one of the, mid doors. Not to go directly into mid at the statue, but the mid door looking back toward the inside, looking back toward a Mohawk. And I got sniped there. And then later on in that match, we respawned or restarted another match or something. And I watched that same Titan kill a teammate of mine at like the same spot. And it was just like, lag has been really, really frustrating for me this week. So lag has been a huge pain point for me in playing this week. So I really did a lot to try to play PvE this week because I'm getting a little burnt on PvP because of how the connections on SBMM are kind of coming apart right now. And I'm hoping that if they're committed to using SBMM, I hope they work on this because this is the first week. Connections weren't even that bad for me, but this second week, I don't know what has happened, but connections have been bad in comp for me. Connections have been bad in comp. I've not been happy about it. I'm gonna be honest. So I wanted to talk about that and get that off my chest because I know a lot of people are complaining about it, and I think it's a fair complaint to have, and I think it's something that needed to be addressed. So let's hope that the teams behind matchmaking can help can figure that out, figure out the issues with that. So let's talk about. I want to talk about the PvP sandbox now. So a lot of the meta is focused around techniques that can lock down a position or location of importance. So these things are like barricades near solid geometry, rifts of the same sort, techniques like Ward of Dawn and Well of Radiance, those kind of supers. In my opinion, once you get to a tier 10 cooldown, your class ability, it doesn't matter what class you are, it comes back entirely too quickly. Like, yes, you've invested a lot of stats into it to come back that quickly, but let's be honest. There's a little bit of overpoweredness for that. Like, I play all three classes, so I can speak for all three classes. I can give examples. For hunters, at tier 10 cooldown, I can back out of a fight and get some health back with Wormhusk. I can OE behind enemy lines and be a little bit safer because I can use Gemini Jesters. For a Warlock, I can just stand beside hardcover and use an Empowering Rift and challenge harder than someone else that's not using that. As a Titan, I can use Sight and Barricades to literally create hard cover from out of nowhere and be able to shoot out from behind it. So, the problem itself, and I'm going to say this here, where everyone can understand, the problem isn't the exotics. In my opinion, I think it's okay for Titans to work the way it is. I think it's okay for Wormhusk to work the way it is. I think it's okay for Geminis to work the way it is. In my opinion, they need to nerf the cooldowns for the class ability on all three classes. I think Hunters comes back way too quickly for me to be able to spam Gemini Jesters, to be able to use Wormhusk for any fight I want. No, I think Titans actually lengthens the cooldown, if I'm not mistaken, but it's still, even, you take off Titans and you still get a barricade as a Titan, you still get it back really quickly. Especially if you use the double class item cooldown. If you use double utility kickstart, you can, at tier 10, you can spam the barricades. You can make one hard barricade and then have it fully regened before the first one even goes away to cast a second one. That's not okay. As a Titan main, that's not okay. So, in my opinion, I think we need to extend the cooldowns at tier 10. Not at base, but at tier 10. Because I don't know how the cooldown scaling works whenever you build into it. So, I'm just going to say this. And I think this will end the problem for the most part. I think this will get rid of the problem for Titans that people are having with Titans right now. Base Titan cooldown for the barricade, whatever it is right now at tier 10, add 45 seconds to it. So that way, if you play a really long round of trials, you can still potentially have it back for the next round. But once you put that barricade down, it's pretty much the only one you're going to have that round. Unless you literally are deciding to play so far away from the enemy team. I think you should add a complete 45 seconds to tier 10 cooldown. And then however that scales back, the further back, fantastic. I think that's what we need to do for that. Warlocks, I think they need to have a similar thing. Maybe give them maybe give them 40, 30, give them like 30 to 45 seconds on their rift. I know their rift can come back pretty quickly too. So, let's do the same thing to them. And then hunters, don't think I'm going to have any mercy on y'all too. I think at tier 10, y'all's cooldown is pretty. It's the worst, or actually it's the best as far as how fast you get your cooldown back. But in my opinion, I think it's a little bit less oppressive in the meta right now because you don't really use a dodge roll to lock down a position for something like a zone point or whatever. So in my opinion, I think the hunter one at tier 10 needs to be increased by 15 to 25 seconds. I think 15 honestly would be something that I personally would be happy with. And that way it makes it harder for the vanishing step. It makes it harder to chain invisibility, which some people have been crying is a pain point. Personally, Invis is, they've already nerfed Invis a little bit, but there is a problem in the game still where Invis does not show up on certain textures. So they need to do some sort of rework on the visibility factor of Invis, where I guess they need to fix the camouflage to make it where you can see the camouflage on certain textures, because certain textures literally make them like not even on your screen. So I think that's where they need to hit Invis, and a plus 15 second cooldown at tier 10 would, in scaling back down, however that does, I think that eliminates a good bit of the issues we have with Invis going forward. Now, a little bit onto the same subject. So, if I'm not mistaken, it's either tier 5 or tier 1. I forget how it works. But Well of Radiance and Ward of Dawn have the lowest cooldown supers. Both of those designed to hold on to a point in PvP. And points are generally tiebreaker rounds for things like trials. Tier 5 needs to be done away with completely. Those kinds of supers are pretty much guaranteed round wins unless you're knowingly going to challenge them with a 1-2 punch shotgun or with some other tech. I personally really like freezing rifts in Ward of Dawns, but those don't counter Well of Radiance, so you have to find something else to do that. But in my opinion, it's too oppressive in the meta right now, and I think we would see a little bit more balance out of the meta if we dropped that from tier 5 completely and moved that down to tier 4. I'm gonna be honest. And then I think one more thing that would make the PvP sandbox a little bit better, and I think this has already been addressed, or will be addressed in the future potentially. They had this huge buff to sidearms, and if I'm not mistaken, it was to their aim assist fall off distance. I think that made sidearms a little bit too strong. So anyone that's trying to challenge a sidearm with a hand cannon in a sidearm range, which you shouldn't be doing that, by the way, but whenever you do, the sidearms win, and it's oppressive. So maybe Bungie should, in my opinion, do a 50% reduction of that. Reduce 50% of the buff that was given at the end of Season 18. I think I think that would eliminate that problem. Honestly, I think that would balance it out quite a bit more. And as far as my feedback on Sandbox, I think that's the way to go. Now, I wanted to talk about one last thing, and probably one of the more important things was the AE changes. So, firstly, before I really get into it, the firing range podcast for this past week featured I don't know if I'm even allowed to show this in the video, but whatever. Okay, so the Firing Range podcast featuring Fallout, Drewski, Cammy Cakes, and Cool Guy. They had a interview with Bungie weapon designer devs Mercules and Chris Proctor, which was a excellent interview in my opinion. I may listen to it a second time this upcoming week, but anyway, there was a lot of talk about things that were upcoming in the future regarding weapons balancing, and they brought up the AE system. And another thing I wanted to say was, if you don't really know all of the ins and outs to AE, you may want to watch Cool Guy's video. Cool Guy did a video very recently on AE called Destiny 2, The Truth About Airborne Effectiveness. So, this video was a very excellent breakdown on how the system currently works. I highly recommend watching this video, and if I will think about it, I will link it in the description down below, and I will also link the DCP Firing Range podcast down below, so that way y'all can listen to it. Maybe, I don't really think it matters which order you listen to it, just one helps you understand how it currently is, and then the Firing Range podcast, they're actually talking about making the AE systems a little bit easier to build into, and they explain a little bit more about it behind the scenes in the podcast. So I think it's an excellent watch. I actually had thoughts about AE last week that I meant to share last week. This week I was thinking, oh hey, let's have something like so like in the leg pieces, since scavenger mods for special weapons don't work in PvP anymore, let's make an aerial effectiveness for each weapon. Let's make it give a certain stat per weapon type. So let's say, like, I want AE on hand cannons. Let's have a leg mod that gives, for example, 15 AE on hand cannons. And then maybe you can put on a second one that gives diminishing returns. So let's say the first one gives 15% bonus, and then the second one gives 7.5% bonus. So that would be a 22.5% or 22.5 AE stat. I know I said percent bonus and that wouldn't correctly add up, but I think you get the point. But yeah, anyway, that is going to be kind of an irrelevant point now, especially if you watch the DCP Firing Range episode featuring Hercules and Chris Proctor. Highly recommend watching this. They are going to give excellent insight here on what they want to do with the system moving forward, and I'm about it. I want to see how it works out. I think they have really good reasoning behind the AE system, and I want to see how it works moving forward. They plan on making it a little bit easier plan on making it a lot easier for primaries. But you still need to be able to build into the system, and I think the system is it's a little bit harsher right now, but they plan on making it easier. So, yeah, that was probably the most major thing I wanted to bring up to y'all today. If y'all have any questions or comments about anything that I've covered in the video, or if y'all have any other thoughts or anything that y'all want to share with me, maybe something to talk about in the future, that is going to be it for this week. Thanks for watching.